Why are you giggling, Tim? It's like
I'm already
high
laughing.
school
Like
kids and we can't even get through the introduction of a podcast guest. You and I go way back, so you want me to introduce? Hey, I'm Tim Kroll's friend, Matt Clark, and he's trying to introduce me in the Narrative Podcast. Folks, thanks for joining today. It's a real pleasure to have everyone on the call. I'm Matt Clark. My identity is I'm a
no,
father.
no, we got to do it right. We got to
No,
follow the
go ahead.
script. No.
Listen, man, you knew this was not going to be your typical podcast. So, I mean, I think we got to roll with it. We're not going to bust it because,
No, I
listen,
agree. I agree. I love this too, and like you just said, is the fact that we go back so far, and we've had hours and hours and hours of conversation in and
yeah,
around. And to be quite frank with you too, and this is one of the things I greatly appreciate, and why I asked you to be on is because you did help develop a lot of this thought process in my mind. And so I greatly appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. Again, thank you for taking
okay,
the time to be here. So this is definitely going to be fun. Obviously, I can't even get through an intro without laughing and just knowing how
right,
enjoyable you guys are in for a treat. Let me tell you that. You have to listen to the entire thing here and not just the first 30 seconds of us laughing.
no doubt.
Oh, good, good, good. So I know who you are. Again, we've talked immense amount of time, but if you were to introduce yourself for the audience, who would you say you
Tim, so it really depends on where I'm at, right? It's all about context, but
are?
really, when we get down to it, and I'm going to try not to get too emotional here. How I got so quickly from ha 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 to like getting misty is crazy, but first of all, my identity is in Christ. I'm a believer. I'm a child of God. I am bought and paid for by the blood of Christ. So that's really where my identity stems from. But I'm also a father, a son, a brother, a business owner. There's so many things that I am, and they're different arenas. But really, what I really am striving to be these days is Matt Clark walking in wholeness,
Mm.
working on fixing my brokenness and becoming the man God wants me to be.
Yeah, and that is a powerful position where we can now do the most good. So I appreciate you being so transparent and so honest with that, because I think many of us are in that position and we all are going through that. So, as we look at this, and again, I know some of the things that you have done to create that, and I know some of the challenges you have gone through, but let's start at the beginning. And I don't mean like at birth beginning, but let's start at the beginning of what did you believe your life was going to be? What did you believe how it was going to turn out? The actions or things that were, and I want to say this to everybody too. It's a fact of what were the circumstances or the events or what did somebody tell you that you will always, it's like the absolute statements, you will always be this way, Matt. And so therefore you believe that. And then let's start with that part of it.
Oh man, that's such a deep question and so many ways to go. But let me reframe it a little bit. Is like, what did I want to be? What did I think I wanted to be? Um, Growing up, I loved baseball, and baseball was a passion of mine. Um, and I always wanted to play professional sports. I wanted to play for the New York Yankees. I lived probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours from Yankee Stadium. Grew up watching the old school Yankees on Channel 11 WPIX. But that didn't happen. And honestly, probably again, there's so much to cover, but growing up in the church, being a person of faith, strong Christian household, etc. I always knew Christ was supposed to be and at the center of my life. But baseball failed me, and I failed baseball. In other words, long story short, and I did a TEDx talk about imposter syndrome, and a lot of that started on the ball field, lacking the confidence in myself, carrying that um, lack of confidence through a majority of my adult life. And it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 years ago, working with a good friend of mine who was in a mastermind, who also is a coach, PhD in pharmacy, really bright guy. We were doing some deep work on a weekend retreat, kind of via Zoom, and man, I just realized I was still struggling with this limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome. And I'm happy to go into that story if you want to set that up,
Yeah,
Tim.
I was
But
going to say, let's, because I know that there are a lot of people, especially when they contact us, they talk about the fact that they feel like an imposter or they lack the confidence and the self confidence. And a lot of times it's a show. When we go and we show up for business, we have this facade that we put on to show a fake confidence, and there's not a real confidence that's going on, knowing how and who you are and how you were created. So maybe let's dive into what created that imposter syndrome. Like, what were the circumstances or events that created that you believed that you weren't good enough to do something?
yeah, so it really stemmed on the baseball field. I really feel a lot of this started. Let me back up just a little bit. So our belief systems are formed subconsciously by the time we're 7, right? The brain waves there are allowing us to take in life, and we have learned behaviors. My dad was a great man, godly man, but truly lacked confidence, and I didn't realize the impact that had on me until years later. But then fast forward to the baseball field, in which I was successful defensively, 3-year starter, 4-year starter. We won a state championship, 3-sport athlete. So I was a very good athlete, etc. But I struggled offensively, and there was some mechanics in my swing that I just couldn't figure out. And I kind of held my dad responsible for a lot of years of not helping me fix it, seeing my drive and passion for baseball, but not being the father that was like, hey, son, we got to do this, or I'm going to get you a coach. I'm going to do this thing. And I really held a lot of resentment on him, at him for a lot of years. A good friend of mine one day at lunch, I was telling this story again about like kind of blaming my dad. And man, he said something to me that just changed that part of my life. He said, Matt, what if your dad thought that you were good enough already? See, my dad has an 8th grade education, raised by an alcoholic dad. Um, my grandmother was a godly woman, started the church that I grew up in. But my grandfather was extremely abusive. My dad has an 8th grade education, made the best of himself, grew a great business, etc. So the fact that I was in high school, getting good grades, a good athlete, on winning teams, I was in his mind living the dreams. He didn't see any deficiencies, right? So I think sometimes, part of our narrative is like we think we are something that we're not. And that lack of confidence stayed with me after I left high school, and I ended up going to work in NASCAR for about 15 years. And that entire time, I just felt like a fraud. I had a college degree in communication, but it wasn't from a major university. I played community college baseball, so there wasn't really a lot of, um, let's say, swagger in that. Like anyone can play community college baseball. So I didn't feel like I had a pedigree or background to be working at the highest level. I was working for Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. That's how I started my career, at the highest level. So for almost 15 years, whether it was there or some other race teams, it's like you're looking over your shoulder saying, do I really belong here? If people really knew my background, really knew my story, they'd be like, what are you doing here? And I held on to that narrative for a long time. And
Can I ask what
yeah,
what do you suppose created that? Was it just the fact that you were resentful for your father, or was there something else that was stated? Was that just an assumed belief based on circumstances? What created that?
no, so it was a fact. Like I struggled. Like, so I was pinch hit for as a position player. I remember being pitch hit for in a major situation, a state playoff game in my sophomore year. Again, and I'll tell the story here. Let me just tell the story to set it up. Is I was a sophomore and I was starting. The reason I was starting is we had a senior who was hurt. This guy's name was Michael, and he was on his way to play at Amherst, which is a Division I college private school. Unbelievable baseball player, but he was hurt and couldn't play. So I got the opportunity to play first base. I was a great defensive first baseman, but we made the state playoffs and we were in a playoff run. And it was a very key situation. And the coach said, hey, didn't really tell you, but it's like, oh, hey, Mike, grab a bat, you're going to pinch hit for Matt. I didn't realize that had that much of an impact on me, but I think that was like a culminating event of which, hey, you had an opportunity to deliver and you didn't. And that stuck with me throughout my high school career. And there were times in which I was pinch hit for in some key situations. The redeeming part is I ended up getting the game-winning hit for our league championship in my senior year. So it was just an amazing full circle moment. But that rocked my confidence. And as an athlete, when you are replaced, when you are someone else is chosen over you, you feel the pain. Now, here's a reality. as a baseball coach, because I was a baseball coach for years at the college level, I would have done the same thing, right? It was the right move by the coach in that situation. So I reconcile that. And like I was talking earlier, I had this weekend workshop that I was working through, kind of doing some deep dive and healing some pain and stuff. I realized I had that event. And what I did is, through some work, some meditation and quiet time on this Zoom call with everyone shut off their cameras. I went back in time, and I saw myself on the Field of Dreams, the great movie by Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams. I saw my high school self, and man, I hope I don't get misty here, but I'm going to try not to. I put my arms around him and said, Matt, it's not you. The coach made the right decision. It's not about you being worthwhile. It's not about your worth. It's not about any of that, right? And it was a powerful conversation that released me from so many years of feeling like I'm not enough. And I think a lot of times we live in life, and society has created so many things that have caused men and women to look at themselves, social media, etc., and say, I'm just not enough. I can't measure up. And I released myself, and I had those hard conversations, man. And when I tell you, having a conversation with your younger self, some psychologists call it your dark self, your young self, whatever that is, where you actually go back in time, right? And the reason this works is because your brain doesn't know what's real and what's imagined, right? So you can go back and you have those hard conversations. And I came out of that, I was crying. I couldn't even talk on the call because it was so cathartic. It was so powerful. And again, when we don't allow Christ, God, as our identity, and we lean into our own understanding and self, we're going to always fail. And we're not going to have that ability to really say, what is my true identity? And really, our identity is what? A child of God. And from there, everything else should flow. But we're broken and we're human. So that's really how I ended up with this massive lack of confidence. And here's the thing, and then we'll shift gears here, Tim, if you want. When I explained this to my wife probably 2 or 3 years ago, she was in tears. She said, Matt, I never knew, because all those years on pit road, the highest of the highs, the lowest of the lows, I never flinched. No one ever knew I struggled. And if you're dealing with imposter syndrome, most people don't know, because what it is, you put up a brave front. And in the face of imposter syndrome, even with all the data and the success, you still don't believe that you're enough. And it really took some deep work for me to come to grips with that.
Man, there's so many things here that I know the audience is struggling with. I know people that are listening are struggling with that. And what you just called out is what I see in almost every conversation. The fact that those that we don't realize are struggling are. And like you just said with your wife, that's such a great illustration of the fact that she never knew, because that's what we do in the, and I don't care if you're a male or female. It doesn't matter to me on the gender, because I've seen it in both, that we set up this facade just so that we don't let anybody else know. And I know that there are people living in through some of that. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
Yeah. And sometimes we do it, and we don't even really realize it.
Mm-hmm.
We just have this subconscious feeling of, I'm not enough, but you haven't had the hard conversation with yourself to say, listen, you're struggling with this and you're really feeling that you're not enough. Why is that? You need to get some help. But it's this deep feeling, this deep seated of like, man, I just hope they don't discover who I am. And I'm going to do everything. And what happens is we over deliver. When there's a lack of confidence, when we're living in that, there is a massive tendency to over deliver. And I've been so guilty of going, and listen, I believe in going the extra mile, right? In customer service and work, everything we do needs to glorify God. But there gets a point when you over deliver because you're afraid of being found out, or what you're delivering now is not enough. And when I finally released that and became comfortable with, like, listen, take me or leave me. I'll give you my best, but the best is all I have. I can't lose sleep over it. It's been very freeing to me. Now, It doesn't mean I don't struggle, right? With confidence. We all struggle with confidence. But again, we are a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask this question to transition a little bit. When was that shift in your thinking? When did you wake up and say, okay, I've got to do something? Because we've talked about, yes, struggle is self-esteem, lack of confidence, imposter syndrome. That's the struggle, right? The how is, okay, I need to do work on myself and I need to go back. But How do you get that wake up point between the imposter syndrome and the hard work? Where do you get to the point like I need to wake up and realize this is hurting me more than anything else? What was that wake up call for you?
Well, so let's go back before I had that event. I had really started to do a lot of deep work into the brain science of confidence, high performance, belief systems, really. Um, but this event was a watershed moment that weekend where I realized that was what was holding me back, this imposter syndrome. And what happens is, I'll give you the nutshell, and this is kind of the crux of my TEDx talk, is that our bodies, our brains, minds are connected to the physiology of our body, right? We know it, right? Fight, flight, or freeze, etc. But what happens is when we get into a belief system and we begin to live out that belief system, our physiology responds to that. So what happens is we begin to condition our body, condition our cells, our physiology to crave those feelings of not enough, of insecurity. All of those neurochemicals that kind of drive us, we begin, and I use the metaphor of like we reach for this candy time and time again because we've become addicted to the feeling and we're reaching to it without even realizing like, and I'll say it this way. I would always pick up on, let's just say we were talking and you said something that I might have construed as negative, right? Or, that I might feel was towards me. I would pick up on that. I would become very aware of that and be like, oh, okay, Tim doesn't think I'm enough for XYZ. And that just fuels this cycle of belief systems through your physiology. And what I discovered, even going through some very difficult times, is being aware of your physiology because it's all interconnected, right? And that's when I began to really say, okay, there's something to this, and I really started to deep dive into that. And that was the clarity moment for me.
Mm. So from that clarity moment, and we can either talk about it. I think we need to go down this road because we need to know the how. So you have this moment of clarity, and maybe for somebody listening that they hear what you're saying and they're like, "This is exactly where I'm at." What's the next step that you took to be able to start to adjust these beliefs? And I mean, I've read the research too, and they say it takes a year to not have that natural inclination to reach for that candy, that illustration that you gave. It takes over a year to be able to not want to reach for that because your brain has to retrain itself. So what was your next step, and how do you then take those steps to start to beat this imposter syndrome and start to build confidence in who and how you were created?
Yeah, I think it really comes, you have to ask yourself, where did this belief come from? And this is part of the TEDx talk. Why am I reaching for this belief? Why do I keep reaching for this candy? Right? Is the belief true? And what am I going to do about it? So, what am I going to do about it is I have to reframe. So, if I'm feeling not enough, I have to ask myself, is this true? And in dealing, I have a coach slash therapist, which has been phenomenal. Um, he said sometimes the best lies have just enough truth in them, right? So there might be a little bit of truth, but you have to ask yourself, and this is what he challenged me: what is the lie? What is the lie in this situation? I'm not enough for this presentation. Well, is that the truth? Well, where's the lie? Right? And it's like, okay, maybe you haven't done a lot of presentations. So you might be a little bit inexperienced, but you can get the experience. And so it's picking out the lie. It's also understanding too, where in comparison is a huge part of this. I wrap my mind around what everyone knows they learned. No one was born knowing everything. So if I don't know enough about marketing or I don't know enough about a particular topic, I can learn it. And just because someone has spent some time ahead of me learning the neuroscience of performance or whatever that is, doesn't mean that I can't learn it. And I think sometimes we think we're precluded from learning stuff because someone's already learned it. We all have to learn to get to the knowledge base that we need for the success that we're looking for. So those are just a few of the things, just reframing, you know, is this belief true? And you have, listen, it is a battle. Like your mind, it's crazy that your brain, right, and your mind are two different things, but your mind interacts with your brain to say, hey, you know what? yeah, we're going to go back down this road of negativity because your body, and I really think on a spiritual level, it's because we are truly broken going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. There was some brokenness that occurred that we now live in a negative driven world, right? Which Adam and Eve did not have this until they experienced shame, which was a negative emotion, right? So now we are all driven by this negativity. Think about it. How often do you, and the folks listening, when you see something, you get something in the corner of the envelope that says IRS. What is your first thing? I'm getting audited. I owe money, etc. Right? You never think I'm getting money back, right? So we're programmed.
We
You know,
literally just had this happen. Literally, Michigan sent us a state income tax thing, and I just had this exact scenario happen. It was
right?
a refund check for $600 or whatever it was. I thought it was them telling me that we were. I swear, I just had this exact thing.
Yeah. Now you owed 6,000 instead of getting 600 back, right? So anyway, it's just being aware, man. And I honestly, what I am learning now is being aware of my physiology. Because I don't want to go deep here, but see, emotions happen at the subconscious level and the conscious level. Feelings happen at the conscious level. So we can have emotions running subconsciously that we're unaware
Hmm.
of. Anxiety. You could be like you're anxious before you know it. Then it manifests itself. You could be fearful. You could be angry at a subconscious level, and then your feelings boil up. So we have to be aware of that. Just really dialing into what is happening with my physiology so I can help control my physiology through my thoughts.
So let's transition into just a little bit of what do you do now to write your narrative and to craft your legacy? What are some of the habits and routines and some of the things? And I know that you're extremely passionate, and I know obviously we've talked, but even talk about some of the passion and what you want to create now for men and for families, because I know we talked deeply about that.
Yeah, so here's the full transparency. The last 3 years has been about building me and my brand. I think God got tired of that because for a long time, Tim, I've known that truly my true purpose, my true mission in life is masculinity, marriage, and mindset. Now I dove hard into the mindset, but I really was kind of the Jonah experience with the masculinity and particularly marriage. I am super passionate along with my wife to help couples build strong, godly marriages because I think sometimes we take our marriages for granted. And listen, Satan wants to kill, rob, destroy the family. And if he can do it through mom and dad, if we can do it through other ways in the family, if he rips the nuclear family apart, he's winning. So I am super passionate
Can I
about
can
that.
I ask? I'm going to interrupt you here just for a second. Can I ask? Was the battle due to some of this imposter syndrome of you becoming a man and showing and saying, I am qualified, I'll use that word, or I am confident that I can help others? Or the reason you were hesitant was that due to the fact that you felt like, hey, I'm still an imposter. And who am I to talk to another man and help his marriage or help his life?
No, not at all. Basically, I just you want to because you set it up with the habits and stuff.
Yep.
My daily habit used to be to spend a lot of time in the Word, journaling. The Word being the Bible, God's Word, etc. What I found myself over the last 2 or 3 years was really spending my time studying, research the words of men. That is the psychology, that is the understanding of the mind, the brain, the performance, all of which is important. Has nothing to do with um, uh, confidence, has nothing to do with imposter syndrome, has to do with the reality that Satan is attacking marriages.
Mm.
And there was a wake up call that we received, and it was just it was a moment of galvanization. Like it was galvanizing. So we're like, wait. And my wife and I have known, we've talked for 10 years, like, hey, we've had a great marriage. We want to help folks, but we just knew. We just knew at the beginning of this year, like it's time. And so it wasn't anything to do with that. It was simply we knew it was time, and God made sure we knew it was time.
Mm. Okay, so what do you do then? What do you do to work with and build yourself along with building others?
Okay, so this is new for us, right? And here's the first thing that I'm going to encourage anyone is, and I'm going to use this. I was up at the North Carolina Boys Academy, which is a division of Teen Challenge, troubled young men, 13 to 17. The pastor there slash chairman, founder, is a great, great godly man, friend of mine. And one morning he was talking in the devotional, and he said, "You cannot experience true holiness without wholeness." Right? The problem is, Tim, we're broken. We're all broken. And I think a lot of times we limp through life with our brokenness. And I did. I did for 30 some years of marriage, 33 change years of marriage, 34 years of marriage in March. And really, what I'm doing first is working on me. I can't help other men, although I can, and I already have. Karen can't help other ladies, although she has. But truly, until we have allowed God to really sift us. And there's a song that I heard about the threshing floor, right? And the threshing floor is about getting rid of everything that doesn't matter. And we're in that process of letting God truly sift us on the threshing floor to remove all the impurities so we can be used in a service. Now, does that mean you have to be perfect? No. So this is not what that is about, right? Because you can serve right now. Like, it doesn't matter. But for what we're looking to do and the path and the journey that we are taking, we are working diligently. And I'm going to be very transparent with the folks here. One of the issues that I have dealt with in our marriage that has caused some pain is my anger. And it is hard for me to look at in the face. And it has been super difficult. Not every day, not every week, but moments of anger that have injured and hurt my wife. And I can't continue in that cycle and be truly blessed with God, because it is an ungodly um, attribute that I have. And I talked to my mom, and like, I am getting to the roots. What are the roots of my anger, right? Learned behaviors. There's a lot of things that I am working through. And again, this is just a shout out to the young parents here. I don't care how young your kids are. They hear what's going on. And basically, you're in the brain waves of deep meditation, deep prayer. Those are the cycles of brain waves. Those are the learning brain waves until you're about age 7. And you are just taking in life as a sponge. How do you deal with finances? How do you deal with relationships? How do you deal with each other? How do you deal with anger? How do you deal with sex? How do you deal with all the things that couples deal with? So be aware that that little sponge sitting in the corner that you think is playing with toys is hearing you argue, disrespect, whatever is happening in your family. So all that to say, Tim, and put a bow on this, is like, I am just at a point now where I am just allowing God to truly, like, God, what do you see in me? What needs to change? I want to change my narrative and truly be the godly man that you've called me to be the protector, to be the warrior of my home.
I could almost just do a mic drop right there and just leave it. It's just, I mean, it's powerful. So, as we kind of start to wrap up, and we can take this one of two ways. We can either say, if you look back on yourself, and I know you've done this, what is the one thing that you felt was the most important piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? And I'm not talking, something that would change your future or something like that, but what would be that one piece, or maybe, and what is the one piece that you want to leave with the audience today?
What would I tell my younger self? Wow, that is a really great, deep, profound question. I would say this. It's, and it maybe sounds so cliche in Christian circles, but I believe it more so than ever. Find your identity in Christ, your true identity. Allow Him, right? Allow the Heavenly Father to just lead you, to guide you. And Lynn, I've been a believer a long time. I've been hot, I've been cold. Thankfully, He has not spit me out of His mouth totally. And I am so grateful for His unconditional grace and mercy. But honestly, it really comes down to faith. And the one thing that I would leave the audience with is, it's not too late. I have hard conversations with my sons that I have to have of like, okay, listen, you may have seen me get loud with mom or treat mom in a disrespectful way. And even if it was once or twice or whatever, and listen, it was more than that. So I am not taking the easy way out here. Um, I have to go and make some restitution and change. I have to break some generational things. So I want to encourage folks, it's not too late. I just turned 57 and I am embarking on a second career here. I'm planning on writing a book called The Second Arena. Really, it's about, you have your first arena of success, but like, what is that second arena? And we are going headlong, battle ready, really working with men and women to save their marriage, to get folks to wake up in their marriage before it's too late.
Yeah, I love that. So how can people get in contact with you? I know you've got a lot of stuff going. It's coming, like you just said, you're going to write a book. There's several things that are going to be coming out. How can people get in contact with you so they won't miss something? Or if they're interested, they can actually see as it comes out. How should they connect with you?
Okay. This is going to sound so horrible. I have been off social media.
I
We're
know.
in May. We're in May here, gang. May 2024. I have been off of social media since September of 23. Um, my website is mattclarkmc.com. I have put a pause on everything. I'm not marketing. I'm just I'll have to let you know so you can let them know through your email blast. Like I have shut down everything, Tim, because I am in a total reboot. I just feel like God has me in this holding place of like, be still.
Mm.
Don't worry about the marketing. Don't worry about the folks. Because I did that. I spent years, Tim. You and I talk. How many countless hours did we talk about, hey, building our brand, building our platform, doing, we have to provide, we have to do our thing, right? I am in a moment where God is like, son, chill out, be quiet, just listen, do what you're doing, keep your hand to the plow. And, at some point, maybe he'll raise me up. If not, I'm content doing what I'm doing quietly.
Yeah. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. So, I know what you're doing. I will, and I promise on all of my channels, I will be sharing what you are going to be doing. And whether that is a podcast or the book or anything else. So
Well,
go ahead.
let me say, okay, I will say this. I am the one thing I will talk about this within the next few months. I will be launching some form or fashion, the Driven Champion Mastermind. And that really is centric to masculinity, marriage, and mindset for men. A paid mastermind, I don't know what that looks like, but I do want to begin to rally men around this idea of being driven. I have a whole acrostics for the driven, which I shared with you in the past. Maybe another call will do that. But really about what is godly masculinity? What does a covenant marriage look like? And what does it mean to have the right mindset to walk in life? So I'm launching something. I don't know what that is. It's like I feel like, when
Yep.
that happens, I'll let you know. And if your folks are interested, we can connect.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, again, the website. It's there. It's going to be in our show notes. If you're not following that part of it, you can always follow me directly, Tim at Tim Kroll. You can definitely do all of those things. So anyway, get in contact with us. And I want to say this as we close out, Matt. Once again, thank you for being here. You've shared an incredible amount of wisdom, and these are things that people are going to have to go back and listen to again, just to draw out all of those little nuggets that are there, and just an immense amount of value. So thank you for that. But if you're listening, make sure you contact us and let us know if something made an impact. And I think you got a contact form on your website, Matt. I want to say
I
that,
do.
but yeah. So
No, there's a web.
there's a contact
You,
form.
you can get me through my website. Again, I know it sounds anti-marketing, and I know you're a marketing guy, but I have just put the brakes on everything. But
No, it's good.
You can find me on social. Matt Clark MC across all social media channels. You can hop on and give a follow. Eventually, I will be back at least posting some high level contact at some point.
Gotcha. Yeah. But again, reach out if something resonated with you or something made an impact, or if you're making changes or you just have questions. Again, everybody that is on this show, everybody that has a narrative and is talking, has the passion to be able to help people. That's why they're here. That's what they're doing. And so we'd love to be able to hear. It fulfills us. It gives us a reason and a purpose to keep going. So until next time, keep writing and crafting your story because every story is just as critical, just as important. So don't stop and keep writing your story.